Hello, today I will be discussing Descartes' sixth meditation, the existence of material things and the real distinction between mind and body. So this meditation relies heavily on dualism. Dualism is the idea that there are two substances that make up our universe, as opposed to monism, the idea that there is only one substance that makes up our universe. Because Descartes is arguing for the existence of material things, he first must argue for the existence of a material world. He does so by differentiating between imagination and pure understanding. The argument that Descartes uses to do so is a triangle. So a triangle, as seen through pure understanding, is a shape with 3 angles and 3 sides, and this is very easy for us to conceptualize. Now through imagination, we can come up with an image in our heads of what a triangle looks like or could look like depending on the angles and the lengths of the sides. Descartes uses this as evidence that our senses interact with our minds in ways that we cannot conceptualize through understanding. It can be read in a quote on page 51. I can, as I say, easily, and since there is no other equally suitable way of explaining imagination that comes to mind, I can make a probable conjecture that the body exists. But this is only a probability, and despite a careful and comprehensive investigation, I do not yet see how the distinct idea of corporeal nature, which I find in my imagination, can prove any basis for a necessary inference that some body exists. Notice how Descartes is still full of doubt and remains tentative to accept the absolute fact that there is a material world. Instead, he just uses this as evidence enough to create the dualist theory that the mind and the body are separate entities that make up our universe. Because of this, that Descartes comes to the conclusion that the two substances that make up our universe are the mind and the body, and these are two very separate and very distinct entities. For example, the body experiences the world through senses in ways that the mind can only hypothesize and conceptualize. It is by accepting that the mind and the body do not share any similar attributes or qualities that Descartes is able to argue that our minds are in fact distinct and exist independently from our bodies. Here is Descartes' argument for proving so. P1. God's existence as a perfect entity guarantees not only that all of our clear and distinct perceptions can be true, but that all of our clear and distinct perceptions are necessarily true. P2. We can clearly and distinctly perceive that the mind is thinking, non-extended, indivisible, invisible, etc. P3. We can clearly and distinctly perceive that the body is non-thinking and extended, divisible, visible, etc. P4. These clear and distinct perceptions indicate that the nature of the mind is completely incompatible and thus separate from the nature of the body. The conclusion: our minds are truly distinct and exist independently from our bodies. So it's because of the conclusion to this argument that any dualist must confront 2 crucial commitments. The first being that the mind cannot be identified with the body or any part of the body. The second being that the mental properties are not the physical properties, and vice versa. It is because of this general mind-body problem that many dualists have trouble contributing and committing to Descartes' idea of dualism. Many of the issues that arise from this problem include questions that have hard, almost unanswerable natures, such as, if the mind and the body are so separate, how do they connect to each other? Is it possible for me to then pass along my emotions and my feelings onto someone else or some other material? Another example of this problem could be phantom limb. Say, for instance, that my foot were cut off. My body would then not be whole and very harmed. My mind, however, would be intact. How is it then that if I have no more senses on my foot, that sometimes I would be able to perceive pain on the area that is no longer part of my body? However, there are many alternatives to this type of dualism. Epiphenomenalism, for instance, is when someone believes that the body affects the mind, but not vice versa. There's also parallelism, in which the mind and the body would never interact. Dualists believe that the mind is identified with the brain, but not reduced to physical traits or properties.